What's your purpose? What's your vision? What mark will you leave on this planet long after you're gone? I'm Henry Winslow, and you're listening to Dharma Talk, the only podcast where I interview inspirational yogis on how they're changing the world in their own unique ways. Whether you're still searching for your purpose or already walking the path, I hope these stories get you excited to live your Dharma. Welcome to Dharma Talk, episode 000. Guys, this is going to be a slightly different type of episode today for the very first one. I want to take the opportunity to introduce myself and give you an idea about what this podcast is going to do and what it's all about. My name is Henry Winslow, and first and foremost, I'm a student and teacher of yoga. But on top of that, I'm also a budding entrepreneur, and I've, in the past couple of years, opened a couple of different online businesses. I'm very fascinated with technology and how it allows us to connect with people all over the world in this day and age. That's a very new thing, and it changes what is possible with yoga. I believe that. So this podcast is really a combination of those two passions of mine. It's going to be an interview-based talk show where each week I chat with a different guest, an inspirational yogi, about their Dharma or their understanding of their Dharma. I take that to mean their mission or their purpose or path in this life. But each guest is going to have their own perspective on that, and that's one of the things that we'll be talking about. Each week when you tune in, you're going to get to listen in on these conversations and hear how these amazing yogis have found themselves exactly where they are today at this point in their life, and how their yoga practice has empowered them or taken them in surprising directions. We're also going to talk about the ups and downs of their journey, some moments of resistance that they've faced, because as we all know, it is a process. Nobody just walks out onto the mat, does their practice, and then comes off and knows, okay, here I am, world, accept my service. It's a bit more complicated than that. So we're going to dig into those things. My goal for this podcast with every episode is going to be to drill down into people's personal stories, because I think that's where the true colors come out, and that's where we can all take away really powerful emotional information and inspiration. Tactically, that's what I'm going to be trying to do with the conversations. But on a broader scale, my goal for the podcast is really twofold. I want you as a listener to maybe be able to connect to a new person and a new mission that you can support or rally behind. And every week, every episode, every guest is going to be an opportunity to do that. And then secondly, for those of you who are still unsure of what your place is on this planet, because I've certainly been there and I feel like I am there now, to be quite honest, is that you'll be inspired by some of these people who are so confident about what they're doing and know the impact that they're trying to make. So it's a lofty goal, I'll admit that, but that's what I'm trying to do here. That's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, and maybe that's my Dharma for now. I believe that before taking on any major project, and let's be clear, that's what this podcast is. This is going to require a lot of time and energy on my part to put this together and keep great interviews coming your way every week. Before you take on any project, I believe it's important to know why you're doing it. And, there are a couple reasons why I'm doing this. Selfishly, I think it's going to be really great for me and my personal development. I'm naturally an introvert, so challenging myself to get on the microphone with a different person who I'm inspired by every week is going to be great for my communication skills. And also selfishly, it's going to be great for me to get connected to these really inspirational people that I can learn from. But selflessly, I think that there's real value in this podcast, and I think any conversation that I can benefit from, I I think you guys can benefit from too. And I would love to have these conversations that I have be an open forum. And I want you all to be able to hear it and be inspired by it too. And, like I said, it's not just about being inspired. It's about connecting under a common cause. I think that there are a lot of yogis out there who have really passionate beliefs about what they're trying to do, and we can only get as far as we can on our own. It takes communion, it takes collaboration, it takes rallying together to make a big difference, and that's going to be a major effect, I hope, of this podcast, is to get various messages out there that different people resonate with, and we can all come together to support them. So that's one big reason why I want to do this. And then at a personal philosophical level, I think the best way for me to explain why I'm doing this is to tell you kind of my origin story about how I got into practicing yoga. And that's a question that I get a lot, from from my students and also from other people that I'm practicing yoga with at any given day. It's it's always a fun thing to ask people, like, how did you get into this? Because everybody's got their own reason. So I'm going to tell you mine. So my first time coming into a yoga class was in 2010. I was, at the time, a competitive springboard diver. I was diving in college, and it was the summer between my junior and senior year, and I was in New York City for an summer internship, and I didn't have access to an aquatics facility. I didn't have access to a pool with like an NCAA quality diving board or anything to train on. And I asked one of my friends, or I was explaining this predicament I was in to one of my friends who also was a diver and an alumnus of my team, actually. And he said, "Henry, you gotta check out yoga. You're gonna love yoga. I've been practicing it for a while now, and it's cool because just like diving, there's a big focus on physical awareness of the body, coordination, and you're going to be able to keep up your flexibility and strength so you can get back on the boards when you get back to school." So I thought, okay, cool. This sounds fun. I mean, I knew what yoga was. I just hadn't ever given it a shot. So I went with him to a yoga class at New York Sports Club, which is, a chain franchise gym. It's not a yoga studio. And anyone who's practiced yoga in a gym versus a yoga studio knows the difference. It's much more surface level and much more geared toward the physical aspects of the practice, which is fine because, quite honestly, in the beginning, that's what I was looking for, the physical aspects of the practice. So I went in and I took this class, and I really liked it. I thought it was fun to do the shapes and do the inversions, practice like headstand, try to do a handstand and fall out, but just keep doing it. And I got really interested in it. So I started going to all the classes. Like I was going to a yoga class at New York Sports Club every night of the week after my internship let out. And I had to go around to different locations to make it to yoga classes, because the one in my neighborhood, was cycling between yoga class one night, like trampoline class the next night, and boxing the other night. And I just wanted to do the yoga classes, so I kept doing them. And pretty soon I had favorite teachers, and I was seeking them out. And then eventually I was like, okay, I got to go to a legitimate yoga studio. Let's try this. And I started going to Yoga to the People, which is a donation-based yoga studio in the East Village of New York. And I was doing that. By the end of the summer, I was going there pretty regularly. Then I had to go back to school because summer ended. And the ironic thing is I actually ended up not being on the dive team that year. I quit the dive team because I got an opportunity to join an all-male singing group that took me around the world on a world tour. But that's a totally separate story. Anyway, I didn't practice yoga that school year. But as soon as I moved back to New York at the end of graduation, I jumped back in right where I left off. So I started going back to yoga to the people, and I was loving it. And then somebody, actually, no, not even a person. I got a marketing email from one of the like Groupon style coupon websites called Guilt City, and I got an ad basically to buy a 30-day pack at one of the Bikram studios, Bikram Yoga Grand Central, which is no longer open these days. But that was what really got me deeply embedded in my yoga practice. I bought that 30-day pack. It was for January 2012, and you better believe everyone in there was doing their New Year's resolution, and that studio was packed. But I went basically every day. When I first started, I think I was doing maybe 5 days a week Bikram at that during that 30-day window that I had, and I got hooked on it. And after the 30 days were up, I didn't keep going to Grand Central because I was living somewhere that wasn't super convenient to that, but I joined the other Bikram studio in my area, and it wasn't long at all before I was practicing every single day. And Bikram yoga is what really connected me to my practice. I ended up, before a year was up, I started a 365-day challenge of Bikram yoga, and I completed it. So before 2 years of practicing Bikram yoga, I had done a 365-day challenge, and that isn't you miss one day and do a double the next day to make it up. That was, even though I was working a corporate job and traveling around for my ad agency clients, I made it a priority to get in and do my Bikram yoga class, 90 minutes, 105 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees humidity, by the book, no matter where I was, once per 24-hour period. And there's a lot to be said for that. It teaches you a lot of discipline, not just to do the practice, but to commit to being there on the mat every single day. But about 9 months into my practice was the first time I took the Bikram advanced class, which is kind of this like cult insider thing. Not so much anymore, but at the time it was more heavily guarded. You had to be invited to the class. It was never on the schedule at the studios, or you needed to be a teacher or something. But in New York, there was at least at the time, there was quite a culture around that and doing the competitions for USA Yoga. So I started going to the advanced class back at Grand Central, my very first Bikram studio. And I was doing that with Joseph Insignia. He was leading the class. And I did it once a week, and it was humbling. I was new to the practice at 9 months, definitely still new, but I had a natural talent for it. I was getting better at a rate that was, I would say, probably unusual. Like, I wasn't exceptional in the grand scheme of things by any means, but I had a strong practice, and that's why I was invited to take this class. And when I got in there, I was like, wow, there is so much more to learn. I can't do any of this stuff. If you're not familiar with it, this is an 84 asana sequence that actually is from the lineage from which Bikram derived his 26 postures and 2 breathing exercises. His teacher's name is Bishnu Ghosh, and so this is sometimes called the Bishnu Ghosh 84 asanas. And I saw that. I remember my very first advanced class, Joseph was there, and he had this amazing practice doing things I could never imagine. And also my now close friend and teacher, Jared McCann, was also in there. And the two of them were just, head to head doing their handstand scorpions. Nothing could stop them. They could do every single pose in the sequence. And that was a pivotal moment for me when I saw that. Because I remember thinking, wow, this is really cool. There's so much that can be done with the body. And at the time, I didn't have this this kind of dichotomy that I'm about to explain. But in retrospect, I know that was an important kind of mental moment for me to have that reaction to it. Because there are 2 ways that I think you can respond to seeing physical feats, or not necessarily even physical, but feats that seem out of reach for you at the time. You can see them and be inspired and think, another person can do that, which means I can do that. Or you can have kind of a scarcity mindset or a fear mindset and see it and be just intimidated and discouraged and say, what's even the point? And that wasn't something that crossed my mind, but as a teacher now, I do see that happen. And that's why I've sort of made it my main message underneath all the technical instruction of my teaching. The real thing I want to get across to people is that you can do anything. You can have or do whatever you want in this life, in your yoga practice or otherwise, but you have to get interested in the process. That's what it all is. I love my yoga practice. I don't like taking days off. I always want to get in and do my poses. And yes, sometimes my yoga practice is not doing asana. Sometimes it's being seated and watching my breath for 5 minutes. I'm not so hardcore about making sure that I do. Back when I did the 365-day challenge, that would have been the end of the world to miss a class. But these days, I'm a little bit more lax about it. But I still love to do my practice. And I think that is what is responsible for my continued growth and development. And to take it full circle back to my little introduction of myself at the beginning, the yoga is absolutely linked to the entrepreneurial bug that I caught. Seeing myself overcome all of the plateaus, shatter through all the barriers that I might have once held for myself in my yoga practice, taught me to never question myself and believe that anything that I can envision, I can achieve. And yes, of course, there are still moments of self-doubt, but that's why you keep practicing. The yoga always gives you the power to keep going. So I don't think without yoga I ever would have been able to, or maybe I would have, but certainly not when I did, quit my job, my cushy job in corporate America and go at it as an independent contractor, freelancer, and an entrepreneur. So, that's what I want everyone to get out of yoga. I want you to realize that no dream is too big. If you want something, you should go out and take it. And if you don't like what you have, you should send it back and get a new one. That's what yoga can do for you. It teaches you not to lower your standards artificially just because you think you don't deserve what you want. And also, that's what I want this podcast to do. It's kind of like a compliment to your yoga practice. You get to tune in and hear from these amazing people who are making huge waves, big impact in the world, and who attribute part of that success to their yoga practice, so that if you hit a bind or you have a moment of self-doubt, you can get inspired by some other people who have walked the path and been through the hardship and are still going strong on the other side. So here's what you can expect from Dharma Talk. Every week on Thursday, I'm going to release a new episode featuring a new guest yogi. And each episode's going to be about an hour or less. Nothing crazy long. I don't want it to be overwhelming. I want it to be digestible. There's certain questions that I'm going to ask every single guest for that consistency and that common thread to pull it through. But at the same time, I want to be free and flexible to take the conversation in a different direction. So if the inspiration strikes, we're going to do that. The format, it could change over time. I'm certainly open to your feedback, constructive or otherwise. So definitely get in touch to let me know what you're thinking of the podcast as it grows and develops. I want to hear from you, and I want it to be of value to you. So let me know what you're hoping to get out of it. There are a few ways you can get in touch with me if you want to talk about Dharma Talk. First, you can find me on Instagram. That's my social media platform of choice, at Henry Wins, HenryWins. So send me a message there and we can chat. Or you can go to my website, henrywins.com, and contact me through the contact form there. There's also some cool online classes, audio and video, if you want to check those out. So that's cool. I appreciate you taking a look there. Lastly, if you enjoy this podcast and you want to keep it going and share it with more people, the best thing that you can do is subscribe, rate, and review on whatever platform you're listening. Obviously, the big one is iTunes, but also I appreciate the reviews on Google Play, Stitcher Radio, whatever else you're checking it out on. So that's it for episode 000. I'm launching with 3 interviews, 3 separate episodes, so please go check those out, and I can't wait to hear from you.